Hello everyone and welcome to the 2010s. We have recently been through the best JRPGs of the 90s and 2000s, and now it's time to dig into our most recent decade. The 2010s certainly had its ups and downs. In the 2010s, we saw Donald Trump begin work on a giant wall, a wall which still stands 0 inches tall. We saw the United Kingdom say bye-bye to the European Union, while England's Prince Harry married Rachel from Suits. We saw Mark Zuckerberg go on a shopping spree, buying Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, and a giant family pack from McDonald's. We also saw Kristen Stewart finally make the hard decision between necrophilia and bestiality, a decision that I never thought she would make. But most importantly, it was a decade with some pretty amazing JRPGs. To be honest, there were some really quiet years for the genre here, but I do feel like things eventually got back on track. This video will follow the same format with the same rules as my previous videos of the 90s and 2000s. I'll be choosing one single video for each year, and the release dates will be when they were first released in Japan. This list is also just my personal opinion, and I know it will be totally different to yours, so let me know what your favorite JRPGs are by year in the comments below. Before we begin, if you liked this video, it would help me out a lot to hit that like button and sub for more RPG content coming soon. Also, join me on Twitter and hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Alright, this is the 2010s. Let's get into it. The 2010s started off with a bang, with other strong titles such as Nier and Resonance of Fate never standing a chance. Of course, I am talking about Xenoblade Chronicles. This was the first title in the Xenoblade sub-series, which is part of the broader Xena series. This is one of my favourite video game series of all time. While the Wii may have been an interesting choice in hardware given the scope and ambition of the game, what Monolith Soft pulled off here was incredible. Xenoblade Chronicles was met with critical acclaim, with just about every aspect of the game being highly praised. The story, the characters, the combat, the music and voice acting, the RPG mechanics, they were all top tier, but it is the exploration that really stood out for me. Its many massive environments were all stunning, with things to do around every corner. This game set the bar for JRPG exploration, and 13 years later, it's arguably still up there at the top. If you haven't had a chance to play this masterpiece, the definitive edition on Switch is the way to go. Not only does it look and sound better than ever before, but it also features an exclusive epilogue featuring one of the game's main characters. Not going to lie, the next few years were quiet in terms of JRPG releases, but at least 2011 did have a couple of standout titles. Tales of Xillia was close to taking top spot, but I cannot look past Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch. One of the coolest things about this game is that its animated sequences were produced by Studio Ghibli, with the soundtrack being composed by Joe Hisashi, who also composes music for Studio Ghibli films. The game itself is pretty awesome too, and tells an unforgettable tale following Oliver's journey through a magical world. During combat, Oliver and his party can fight alongside familiars, which can be caught and evolved as they grow stronger. Massive Pokemon vibes here. I loved just about everything about this game, and Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch is deservingly my top pick for 2011. If you haven't had a chance to play it, there was a remastered version released a few years ago. If you think 2011 was limited in JRPG releases, 2012 was on an entirely new level with even less titles worth considering. Tales of Xillia 2 was a title that stood out for me during this year, and although it's not as good as the original, it still offered quite a lot. The game takes place a year after the events of the first game and follows a brand new character, Ludger Krusnik, who was surprisingly a silent protagonist. The story progresses through reaching payment milestones for Ludger's 20 million gold medical bill, which was an interesting decision. But the story itself did have some pretty good moments, and I loved how characters from the original Xillia made a return. After all, they are one of my favourite Tales casts. Most of the mechanics are in line with what you'd expect after playing Xillia, and this includes the excellent battle system. To To put it simply, this game was made for fans of Tales of Xillia, and it did a pretty good job in recapturing some of the magic that made the original so good. "2013 gets even more limiting. Fortunately, there was one outstanding title for this year, and that is The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. I only played this series a few years ago, with Cold Steel being my entry point, and it didn't take me long to become completely hooked. I mean, I binged on all other 8 titles at the time in the space of only a few months, and the entire series quickly became one of my favourite series of all time. Trails of Cold Steel is the first part of the Erebonian arc, which features 4 Cold Steel games. The story follows Reen and Class 7 throughout the school year, focusing on the field studies that takes them to various locations across Erebonia. Here, they learn about the unstable state of the region and the many issues plaguing the land. The best thing about Cold Steel is the story, characters, and world building. There is so much to learn about, something that no other JRPG series has been able to match. Couple this with a great combat system, giant mechs, an outstanding soundtrack, and the world's greatest teacher, and you have yourself one hell of a game. And if you're wondering how to get into this amazing series, there is no right answer. You could start with Cold Steel 1, Trails in the Sky FC, or Trails from Zero, which are all the first games in their respective arcs. The important thing here is that you start somewhere. Oh boy, was this a quiet year. There were very few quality games released this year. I could just say that Trails from Cold Steel 2 deserves it, but we've had a Cold Steel game, so I'm going with something completely different here. Dark Souls 2. Is it an RPG? Yes. Was it made in Japan? Yes. Is it a JRPG? Well, by that logic, it is, so I'll have to allow it on the list. Dark Souls 2 is From Software's follow-up to the critically acclaimed Dark Souls. This is an action RPG series known for its dark, mysterious worlds, great exploration, addictive combat, and of course, its insane difficulty. Dark Souls 2 makes things even harder, with death removing the humanity from a player, which reduces the maximum HP by up to 50%. But aside from a few minor additions such as that, the experience is much the same as you would expect. You'll die a lot, you'll fight epic bosses, you'll stumble across loads of secrets, and you may or may not get into the lore. If you love these kind of games, you will like Dark Souls 2. If not, you should try something else, such as Xenoblade Chronicles X. This is certainly the odd one out of the Xenoblade sub-series. Released as an exclusive for the Wii U, it remains the only JRPG that makes the Wii U worth dusting off. If you're out of the loop, the Wii U was Nintendo's 6th major game console. That's right, there was a Nintendo console between the Wii and the Switch, which is now a relic lost in time. Anyway, Xenoblade Chronicles X does things very differently. The game is less about storytelling and more about exploration and flying around in giant mechs called skulls. The world is absolutely stunning, and being able to reach the heights of far-off mountains on foot and in your skull was an incredible experience. I also love the whole premise, with a massive transport ship crash landing on an unexplored planet. It is criminal that this game is still stuck on the Wii U. If you ever get a chance to play it, Xenoblade Chronicles X is well worth your time. After 5 really quiet years for JRPGs, things finally started to pick up for the genre. 2016 featured some outstanding titles, with a personal favourite of mine, Tales of Berseria, unfortunately missing out. But this is for good reason, for Persona 5 is an absolute masterpiece, and few would disagree with that statement. Persona 5 follows the Phantom Thieves, a group of high schoolers who have the ability to traverse the metaverse. This is a supernatural realm born from humanity's subconscious desires. This great cast of deep characters who you can form social links with was perhaps the best part of Persona 5. I mean, I've been a high school teacher for over a decade, and I can tell you now, my students are nowhere near this cool. Traveling these unique lengthy dungeons, fusing new personas, and taking part in some epic turn-based boss battles were other standout features of this amazing game. Not to mention the unique visual style and awesome music. It's all just so good. I'm assuming that most of you have already played Persona 5, but if you haven't, you should check out the Royal Edition, which features a huge extra portion to this already large game. "2017 was by far the toughest choice for me. There are 3 particular titles that are worthy of the #1 spot, but unfortunately, Dragon Quest XI and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 miss out this time. The winner of 2017 is none other than Nier Automata. Developed by Platinum Games, Nier Automata is an indirect sequel to the original released years prior. This game hits a home run in just about every area. The story is awesome and is told through multiple playthroughs focusing on different characters. To get everything out of the story and to see all of the endings, you'll need to complete the game multiple times. The way that this story reveals itself is truly a unique experience. Well, aside from the other games in the series, which follows a similar sort of structure. The fast-paced combat, the world design, and atmosphere is also excellent, but perhaps the #1 area that this game truly shines is its soundtrack. Every single track has been perfectly composed to add to the already great atmosphere. This is one of the rare soundtracks that I played in my car for years after the game's release. Considering how well this game was received, it's a surprise that another mainline console title hasn't been released since. We need more Nier, so fingers crossed we'll get something soon. Like the previous 2 years, there were also some pretty amazing JRPGs released in 2018. Trails of Cold Steel 4 and Octopath Traveler were 2 of these standout games, but this year, Valkyrie Chronicles 4 takes the crown. As the number 4 in the title accurately suggests, this is a 4th mainline title in this tactical RPG series. These war-themed strategic battles work pretty similar to the other games in the series. We still have the Scout, Shock Trooper, Lancer, Sniper, and Engineer classes of the previous games, but this time there is a brand new Grenadier class who are able to fire mortar rounds at enemies. This adds even more depth to the already great combat. The unique style of visuals and the story are the 2 other standout features here. There are some great moments, and I consider this latest installment to be just as good as the original, which is saying a lot. If you haven't played the other games in the series, then this is still an excellent entry point as it's not directly related to the other games in the series. "2019 was another strong year for JRPGs. Kingdom Hearts 3 and Code Vein were up there as some of my favourites, but Fire Emblem Three Houses quite easily took top spot. Due to the series recently being released on handheld devices, I hadn't played a new Fire Emblem game since Radiant Dawn on the Wii way back in 2007. It really didn't take long for Three Houses to cement itself as my favourite in the series, and it still is to this day. The way that the story is told through 3 different points of view is something that I am always a massive fan of. The cast of characters here were very strong, and I was all too eager to play Three Houses multiple times to see everything and learn about everyone. This is something that I rarely do in any video game. But story aside, it was the awesome combat that really stood out. Strategically forming my team of warriors and sending them out to the battlefield time after time never got old. If you ask me, Fire Emblem Three Houses was a very worthy winner of 2019 and a great title to conclude this roller coaster of a decade for JRPGs. And that was it for the 2010s. Next came our current decade, the 2020s, a time when COVID changed the world as we knew it. A time where Elon Musk and Grimes named their child X, A-E-A-12. and a time where microtransactions became illegal and guilty developers were sentenced to 10 years of playing Superman 64 without sleep. Okay, maybe not yet, but there's still 6.5 years to go. We are only a few years into the 2020s and there has already been some absolutely insane top tier JRPGs. But I guess you'll have to wait another 7 years for that video. What did you think of this list? Do you agree with my favorites or would you change a few things around? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, it would help me out a lot to like, sub to the channel, or just come say hi on Twitter. You can also hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. See you next time.